We'll have our Provost, Thanasis Rakakis, give a brief introduction and context for our new Vice President for Research and Innovation, Teresa Mayer, who will speak on the destination areas, which is one of the components of Beyond Boundaries that has emerged from the conversations over the last year. Now I have to apologize, my slides are full of words, but I did want to make sure that we document this so that those who can't participate today or on WebEx have a chance to actually read a little bit about what we covered. By the way, we will have time for questions, and that's important. We want to have some feedback and some good discussion here with this group. So I'd like to start off with a bit of a near-term pursuit, and that is the glass is more than half full. I feel really good about where we are at Virginia Tech at this moment. When we're talking with Beyond Boundaries, we're talking about the next generation. It's important to start from a position of strength, and I do believe we have that. I want to just describe a little bit. I mean, you've seen this before, maybe not in this context, but at this moment in Virginia Tech's history, most of the vectors are pointing up. We're getting green lights across the board. We have record enrollment, and applicant demand is up 12% for fall 2016 from last year, and last year was a record. So we're starting to see the beginning of a trend of upward interest in Virginia Tech from the undergraduate perspective. Demand is up every category and every college, and it's the most diverse class, or shaping up to be the most diverse class in Virginia Tech's history, and academically the strongest as well. A lot of our colleges have gone out and made special efforts to recruit students. Enrollment management certainly has done that. We spread the word about Virginia Tech and the programs we offer. Operating funds from the Commonwealth have stabilized on a current dollar per student basis. This is one of the ways we look at it. How does the Commonwealth of Virginia support the educational outcomes of our students through their general fund? And over the last 5 years, it's been rather flat, which is good. Going forward, it looks like it's also going to remain rather flat. As we grow enrollment, the Commonwealth has agreed to support that. So we're losing by growing, we're actually gaining. But if you look over the last 15 years, we've lost about a factor of 2 in funding from the Commonwealth on a per student basis in real dollars. So if you look back 30 years, you see further erosion. But the last 4 or 5 years and the next couple look pretty good. Looks like we're in a stable spot. The Commonwealth is also investing in research partnerships, and this is new. This year, we have the Virginia Research Investment Fund that is incentivizing our universities, our research universities, to work together and with the private sector. And it's not a small amount of money. These are tens of millions of dollars that are being pledged to catalyze the cooperation and collaboration of our research universities, which I think we've all come to recognize. No one of our institutions can dominate in any one area, can cover an entire spectrum of activities and be the world leader. We need to have partners, and we can't go it alone. We need to bring our strengths to partnerships, and that's certainly true in the Commonwealth. We have one great success, I think, to point to. There are many other smaller ones, but the Virginia Tech Carilion Partnership that started about 8 years ago in concept has really worked out well in the health sciences. This year we made the case jointly with Carilion and with the people of Roanoke that we would push the Virginia Tech Carilion Partnership to a new level, creating a health science and technology innovation hub in Roanoke that will connect to Blacksburg. So the state has pledged $45 million in construction funding, debt capacity for this project, and so we're seeing a lot of substantial support. With the investment fund as well, will help us recruit talent. And so I'm very optimistic about this idea of partnerships and of innovation hubs, as it already, even though we just started really talking about it in a vigorous way, has already made it into the budget process, into the conversations in Richmond and elsewhere. So great potential and great progress there. And our extraordinary alumni attachment rate. You saw this with the Gallup survey. We have 42% of our alums reporting that they're strongly emotionally attached to Virginia Tech. That is an incredible number. Our peers are in the 18 to 22 range. We're at 42. Gallup doesn't fully understand it. We don't fully understand it. Although those of you who are Hokies, and I count myself among them, do have a sense for why this is why the attachment rate is so strong. And I won't go into it here, but there is something special at Virginia Tech about community, about the layout of the campus, about the drill field, about our history, and about the sort of sense of mutual support that we have at a place like Virginia Tech. it's really unusual and is really great for us. But on the downside, we have the lowest giving rate among our peers at 9%. But this is where the glass is more than half full. I look at this and I say the potential is tremendous. If you look at an emotional attachment rate of 42% and a giving rate of 9%, we've got some upside. And we all know we have some upside there. So that's going to be a point of emphasis going forward. It's absolutely essential for us to move forward as a university. So where are we now? Just look at it objectively, and we could spend half an hour on each one of these bullet points. But I just want to give you a sense of where I think we are and where the conversation should be. In terms of our undergraduate education, we're highly regarded for quality and value. Anytime there's a national study or a survey, we come out in the top group in terms of the quality of the undergraduate experience and the value of that experience, measured against whatever you want. Return on investment, we look at the Gallup report where they looked at a much broader range, smart money, all sorts of other surveys have been done that show that we're at the top of the pack among publics, and some of these surveys we hang right there with the best privates. So I feel really good about that. New degree programs. Even advanced of Beyond Boundaries, we're seeing a very large number of really exciting programs come forward. The real estate program, the water program, systems biology, which was in the news today. I can go neuroscience, nanoscience. These are programs, undergraduate programs that are attracting talent. And I think that's a great reason for why our applications are up. We have a very strong community. I mentioned that earlier. Our reputation is regional. I have to admit, when I came from the last institution I worked at, I didn't know much about Virginia Tech. I should have. It's a great university, but it wasn't well known outside of the Southeast.
That's what you
I
have
see that reputation starting to really spread. State and national demographics. One of our challenges is our net price is high. Even though our list price is not out of range, and in some cases it's lower than a lot of peers, our net price is high. And this is related in part to our relatively small endowment and the fact that we don't have a lot of money that we can roll into scholarships like some of our peers. But this is also changing. I feel good about the vector there. We also have a reputation, a historical reputation as a primarily white institution. And that presents a challenge going forward. It's not an insurmountable challenge. The diversity of our incoming classes grow with each year. But there are challenges in terms of accessing the pool of talent that's out there in Virginia and beyond. There are some students from parts of Virginia that just don't come to Virginia Tech or even think about Virginia Tech. Whether the counselors tell us we're too expensive, which might be true, or they tell us that they won't be welcome at Virginia Tech, or they'll be overwhelmed, it's too hard to get into. There are all these things that prevent some parts, rural and urban, of Virginia as seeing Virginia Tech as an option. And so there's a great frontier there as well. Graduate education. We have a very strong community, very unusual graduate program. Dean Karen DePaul has created a community across all of our individual graduate programs that I've never seen at another university. We're at the leading edge in program innovation. We have slow and somewhat unsteady growth, but it is growth. And so we've seen some real changes in the graduate programs overall, some real advances. They're not growing fast. In some places they're shrinking, other places are growing, but the overall quality is high. But we do lack resources compared to our peers, and that's manifested in a lot of things, GA and RA salaries, go down the list, facilities. So we do have some work to do with graduate education. As far as research goes, we have rapidly growing expenditures. You've heard us, we're over $500 million now in annual expenditures for research. We're the fastest growing of our peers. We look down our list of peers, we are by far the fastest growing of our peers over the past decade. We've moved up 12 or 13 spots in the rankings in terms of research expenditures over the past decade, and no one's moved faster among our peers. But we're in a good place. One of the ways we got there, though, was to make internal investments. We're among the top 100 research universities. We're the highest in terms of our internal investment. 43% of our research expenditures come from internal sources. I mean, ultimately, they're external, but they come from sources that we control rather than directly from external partners. And that 43% can't stay that way. Over time, we need to see the overall research expenditures grow without dramatically increasing that internal investment, it just isn't sustainable. But I'm optimistic there too. I think we're positioning ourselves in a very good place. to grow substantially. We're known for our institute model. It's got its warts, but it put us on a pace. If it weren't for the institutes, we would really be struggling right now. Now we're going to be working and looking carefully at the institute model going forward and how we connect that better to the academic units. And we'll talk a little bit about that today, but that's a great opportunity for us. Publications and citations are low compared to peers, but they're also increasing rapidly. I did that before I came to Virginia Tech. I did that study, and I was kind of shocked at how low our publication and citation rate is overall, although we certainly have strong programs. But I also was impressed with the hockey stick kind of behavior over the last several years, where you see the rates increasing and coming into the middle of our peer group over time. But that will be a long-haul issue. Faculty recognition is low compared to peers. We certainly have members of the National Academy. We have members who are fellows in the various societies. But if you look at it in terms of peers, we're low. And I think all these things play together. They will go up together. Feel good about the trajectory there. Patents, licenses, revenue, and startup activity is low compared to peers. But it's increasing. We need to re-innovate our ecosystem, our innovation ecosystem. There was a report done before I arrived that had a lot of good ideas and real well-researched ideas about how we can do that going forward. We have a new energy, I think, in the Vice President for Research and Innovation Office, new ideas about how to take what works at other places and make it work here. And we have some things that are working really well already. So again, I feel optimistic even though we're starting from a low base. We have one of the best corporate research centers in the country. We have growing enthusiasm around entrepreneurship and innovation, not just with our faculty, but also with our students. And you've seen that. They've started something like 50-some companies last year. And you're going to see that grow as our students become more engaged in entrepreneurship and innovation. Internationally, we're globally recognized and engaged land-grant university. But we're not competitive in any of the global rankings. We're between 248 and 355 of the 5 major global rankings. And we can go into a lot of detail to understand why that is, but it ties primarily back to the issues of publications and citations and faculty recognition. Again, those vectors are moving in the right direction. But to become truly a top-tier research university globally, we've got some ways to go. We've got several what I call tent poles, but we're not a comprehensive global destination for talent yet. And we'll be talking about how we get to that point. There are some programs that are definitely there. They're typically small, and they're known globally, and they're the top 3 globally. If you talk to someone in Europe or South America or Asia about some of our programs, they'll say, yeah, that's in the top 3. That's on my list. If I've got talent and I want to take it somewhere, I'm going to look at Virginia Tech in that area. But that's not a comprehensive strength that we've got. It's isolated. And we need to bring that together. We need to connect those elements of strength, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So this is really our opportunity, in my view, to make the next move. While we have positive momentum, I think that's important. If we were struggling right now, we'd have to focus on that struggle, frankly. Right now, I feel like we're in a position where we can take our energy and look to the future. We're at a time when the change in the world and the landscape of higher education is accelerating. And I think as I get older, everything seems to accelerate around me, and I decelerate. Okay, I'm trying to factor that out and look objectively. And everybody we talked to, we had a panel discussion in the National Capital Region on Thursday, where we had 140 people come to the National Capital Region to talk about Beyond Boundaries. And a good portion of those, 40 or 50, I think, were external partners. And some of them in the panel discussion said the same thing. In their world is changing faster than it ever has changed before. So this is an opportunity for us. This means we have to move now, I think. It's not moving in 5 years. To seize this opportunity, really need to become a global destination for talent, for students, faculty, staff, and partners. Again, we are in some areas, but not in a comprehensive way. And we have an opportunity to define a 21st century global land-grant university on the foundation of a PROSM, which is really, I mean, when you always strip it all away, what is our big advantage? And it's hard not to come to the conclusion that it's the strength of community and the service environment that we have placed ourselves in over the last 120 years, that it really is our strength. Now, if we talk about envisioning Virginia Tech beyond boundaries, we envision the university we aspire to become in a generation's time. We need to identify long-term trends that we cannot ignore and plot a trajectory toward this envision future in light of those trends. And the Beyond Boundaries group, in fact, I should probably take this time to introduce Rosemary Bleesner, Alan Grant, and Thanasis Verkakis. If you could just stand up briefly. They're our co-chairs, very good, of the Beyond Boundaries initiative. We have Kate Keeney, who's our primary facilitator right here. With all those in the on the steering committee, please stand up briefly. I may ask you to do this a little later as well. Steering committee, we're scattered about. Thank you. So this has been, when I charge the steering committee, I charge them with these two bullet items. Let's envision the future university, future Virginia Tech, a generation from now. And let's look at those long-term trends that we sometimes ignore when we do strategic planning. Strategic planning, typically, we do that over a 5 or 7 year cycle. A 30-year trend, you can just say, well, it'll change a little in that 5 to 7 years, but we could probably ignore it. When we think a generation out in the future, you cannot ignore those trends. I mentioned the state disinvestment in higher education. That's happening all over the country. I'm not going to say whether that's good or bad. Actually, there's some aspects of it I think are misunderstood, but the reality is that's a trend that has been occurring, and even though we have plateaus like we're in right now, and occasionally new investment, the overall trend is down. Globalization or internationalization is another one. I mean, I can go down through and list 5 or 6 of these big trends that we could ignore for 5 to 7 year planning, but not in a 30-year planning cycle. But there's something else that we have to take into account, and that is that there will be upheavals in this path that we cannot predict. We know that. We look back over the last generation, there are some things that have happened that are transformative that there's no way we could have known. Now, some in the audience probably knew that these things were going to happen, that we were going to have smartphones were going to be ubiquitous, and I'll give you credit. There are a couple of examples like that where individuals have said, yeah, but if you look what I wrote 30 years ago, I predicted this. But as a university, as a society, we had no clue these things were coming. There will be other things like that, and if I knew what they were, I would tell you, and I would probably be doing something else. But no, probably not. But anyway, there are some things like that. So really, recognizing the accelerating pace of change and developing strategies to become a more agile and dynamic university without sacrificing strengths is absolutely critical. I mean, we cannot just assume that we can plan ourselves to a future a generation away without becoming more agile and more dynamic. A lot of what you'll hear about from the Beyond Boundaries discussion is about attaining this institutional agility. I'd like to add a little bit of my perspective, so you can reject all these, but these are working assumptions that I make when I think about the future of our university. First of all, it's all about talent. I find little evidence to suggest that if you don't have the talent, you can somehow succeed. You need talent at the student level, at the faculty level, at the staff level, at the partner level. You can argue what's the definition of talent. I mean, we can go on forever, but we need it. You know it when you see it. We are at a fork in the road in higher ed. I talked a little bit about this before. This has been a column in various publications on a weekly basis for the last 5 or 6 years. We're at a fork in the road. It's a disaster. The cliff is coming. For some institutions, frankly, the cliff is here. We're not there. We're pretty far from the edge of the cliff. But we are definitely at a fork in the road. If we ignore this opportunity, we will drift toward that cliff. There's no question about it in my mind. We need to be responsive to external constituents. We can't live in a bubble. We have to engage, and we have to develop these partnerships. It's not a coincidence that the state is catalyzing partnerships between its universities and with the private sector. Everybody sees this. This is coming, and we've been ahead of the curve on this. I mentioned the Virginia Tech Carillion partnership, but there are half a dozen others I could mention at a smaller level that have really laid, I think, a very nice trail for us to follow. Some of our peers in many regional public universities are really in dire straits, and this is where I see this accelerating change. If you had asked me 3 years ago about some of the regional universities, despite the fact that we're coming out of a recession, I would have said, well, they'll be fine. They'll work it out. Don't worry about them. They'll be great. The states will come back and invest. They've got tuition potential. They'll figure it out. I don't feel that anymore. I really feel like there are some institutions around the country, and some of them, frankly, are our peers, that are in very dire straits. They have these big holes to fill, IOUs, whatever it might be, and there's just no obvious solution. So On the counter to that, most of our peers are engaged in Beyond Boundaries. They call it different things. You've heard at UVA, they're calling it illimitable, because that was a word that Thomas Jefferson used in his speech. But you can go down the list of our peers, and they're all doing things like what we're doing. So we're not unique. We're not like way out ahead. I like to think we have more running room and we're more agile, but we're not doing it differently. Everybody's looking at the future, trying to plan for that future. And I really do think, and this may sound melodramatic, that those who turn these visions and plans into action will thrive, and the others will frankly wither. And I just don't see, again, maybe I'm overplaying this, but as each year marches on, I see this situation becoming clearer and clearer. And I think we're going to look back in 10 years and say we were indeed at the fork of the road in this period. So let me say a little bit about Beyond Boundaries, and then I'm going to turn it over. Beyond Boundaries will guide decisions small and large. One of the things I love about the process right now, even though it's in the mid-stage, it's approaching a point of reporting back, but it's really still evolving, is that even though the conversations have been conceptual and we're starting to envision the different elements, there's a lot of great work that's been done that you can find on the Beyond Boundaries website. It's already guiding our little and big decisions. So when we have a meeting to talk about budget allocations or talking about the future of the campus or partners in a different area, in a new field for Virginia Tech, every little decision we make is starting to be influenced by the conversations that are happening now about a generation from now. And that's really critical. We need to have that vision, and it will guide our decisions, small and large. So there's some opportunities for action and innovation already. We're in the process of developing a transparent incentive and activity-based budget model that will support data-driven decision-making. And our deans have heard a lot about this. The department heads are starting to learn about it. It's going to take a year of running in parallel with our current budget, and in another year of adapting, and in probably the third year we'll be ready to really engage with it. It'll never run an autopilot. It's always going to have human supervision. But when we look about this issue of transparency, we need to go from the historical budgeting model to one that you can see and understand that will guide your decisions. Maybe it won't guide them completely, but you will know the consequences of decisions you make as campus leaders, as faculty, as students. So I think I'm really excited about where this conversation is going. It will transfer discretionary resources to the college level to incubate discipline or center-specific curriculum innovation or signature research or any of the areas around Beyond Boundaries. So more of the resources that are now held at the center will move down into the colleges, and those decisions will be made at a lower level, frankly. They won't be made in my office or in the provost's office. They will be the responsibilities of the colleges, the institutes, the faculty, the departments, and our students. And I think that's an important innovation, important place we need to go. Every college budget is projected to increase significantly over the next 5 years. Every one of them. Partly it's because the revenue is being pushed down. Partly it's because the revenue is increasing. So the pie is getting bigger, and more of it's going to be under your control. So I think this is an exciting time. It will continue to support the institutes at the current level with additional destination area opportunities. Because the institutes have been strong, and they're in the process of morphing and changing into the future versions of themselves, and we've funded them at a very high base level, I think. We're not going to grow that base level. We need to start turning the corner there. But there are going to be some opportunities for the institutes to partner in the destination areas and the other initiatives that are coming from Beyond Boundaries that will in fact expand the pie for them as well. So I really feel, and they're going to be integrated more into the university. So I think this is also a positive time for the institutes, which really blaze the path toward working across the university and will continue to be at the core of our strength. We're introducing a cross-university incubator to develop the Beyond Boundaries ideas. You're going to hear a little bit more about this in a minute. And in terms of the destination areas, which has been one of the big initiatives, they will evolve on a decade-like timescale rather than a career timescale. They'll preserve the disciplines where we aggregate knowledge and evaluate quality, but they'll allow those disciplines to come and work together. They'll focus on cross-cutting themes and opportunities to become global destinations for talent, beyond the tent poles that we've got, broadening them, expanding them a little bit, but they will allow us to focus new resources in areas where we have opportunities for distinction. They'll develop new areas by linking college and institute strengths in the incubator, and we'll monitor mature areas that will either, frankly, the mature areas will either dissipate, they'll become integrated into the university, or become disciplines, departments, or schools. You look back at computer science, that was an interdisciplinary activity, and then in the 60s and 70s became integrated as a department. That's a route that will still happen going forward. We can see some incubation areas. I came from one that was kind of a destination area back about 15 years ago, nanotechnology, that's now become pervasive. It's been integrated into the disciplines and into the institutes in a comprehensive way. We don't call it out as a destination area, but 15 years ago it was, and it doesn't diminish its impact on the university. So that will be another way of graduating, and certainly there'll be some destination areas that after 10 years or so we'll find out that we've moved on. We've solved the problem. There's no longer an interest in it, or something else has taken priority. So they're going to be more nimble. Let me just say very quickly a few things, just give you a hint of what's coming out of the Beyond Boundaries process besides the destination areas. And these are where immediate actions can start taking place that lead to that future of Virginia Tech in a generation's time. I don't have time to talk about all these in detail. A lot of this material is up on the Beyond Boundaries website, and it's something that we'll be continuing to discuss because these are still formative issues. But we're calling it the VT-shaped student. This is where we take experiential education and integrate it with every student's curriculum in living learning environments. It's basically, just to give you the shortcut, it's the discipline depth, which is the I, if you will. The crossbar is communicating across the disciplines of building skills, and the V that supports the crossbar is informal communal experiential learning and guided experiential learning. The purpose-driven engagement that we know works so well for our students and our faculty. So it's corny, we call it VT-shaped. UVA will not have a VT-shaped student, but still, they may actually have one, they just won't call it that. Inclusive VT, we started this a year ago as well, a little over a year. We have new leadership, we have new energy, and I'm really excited about where this is. It's got to expand our pool of talent. We're talking about some K-12 pathways that the state is helping fund, reaching out into urban and rural districts that don't provide students currently to us, and breaking down some of those barriers. We need to ensure every student develops intercultural competencies. Our employers expect it. They know they need it going forward. So this is a high priority for us, and you'll see a lot of initiatives coming out of Inclusive VT that will move us in that direction. We had a lot of initiatives this past year, 80-some, coming from the individual units. This coming year, we're going to be weaving those together and looking for opportunities to work across the university to further those opportunity areas. Personalized adaptive learning and active collaborative learning. This is pretty clearly our future, is going to these two modes and weaving them together. And there's a lot going on here. We're going to be piloting experiments in this, we already are. And if you think about the way the campus infrastructure is already being built, it's being built to support these two modes, as opposed to the traditional large lecture hall. Not that that will go away immediately. That's going to be a part of our experience for some time, but over time it will be overtaken by adaptive learning, individualized adaptive learning, and active collaborative learning. The Honors College, another growth area for us. You've read some of the announcements about how we're going to be investing in the Honors College. Embracing Beyond Boundary concepts university-wide, focusing on student, faculty, and staff and partners' perspectives, rethinking the way we organize the university around those who we're serving. And that's a fundamental change. It's not that we don't do it now, but it's not, the structure doesn't represent it. I was really impressed by what's going on with wellness and the fact that the 4 units came together across the institution to work together. That could be mirrored in a lot of other ways. Innovation hubs, I talked about one that's already in place in Roanoke that we're building on, but we have opportunities to do this at on the Blacksburg campus, in Newport News, in the National Capital Region, and globally. And Pathway Miners, our new Pathways project. A lot of opportunities there to sync those up with the destination areas, and I think you're going to see a lot of incubating of those concepts as well. Adapting promotion and tenure to reflect the emerging perspectives on excellence. This is a huge topic. We could talk for hours on this. I won't do it here, but we're engaged in those discussions. Collegiate and research faculty pathways. We're also engaged in those conversations about how to strengthen the research faculty pathway, but at the same time, look at this collegiate pathway, which will, I think, effectively move us toward longer-term contracts for those who are primarily engaged in the teaching enterprise. and I think will make us a stronger university. So this is my last slide, and I'll turn it over to Thanasis, but I want you to know that these materials are all up on the Beyond Boundaries website, including a lot that I didn't talk about, especially in terms of the progress that the Beyond Boundaries initiative has already made. We've edited them just last week with external partners in the NCR. Happy to elaborate on that. We're providing input to faculty. We want you to provide input to faculty-led steering committee. And the steering committee, again, could you stand up real quick so you see who they are? You can do this electronically through the Beyond Boundaries website, but you all know these people. You can talk to them informally. We expect the Beyond Boundaries visioning document to be ready in May. It provides a framework for future strategic planning and it will guide decision making. It already is. And it'll also guide the development of assessment processes and outcome measures, which we have not yet started to seriously talk about. So this is the next phase. Once we have the Beyond Boundaries vision in place, we need to really talk about how we're going to measure our progress. Thanasis and I will be doing some informal lunches this summer to learn more about your views on these outcomes and have conversations about Beyond Boundaries. And we'll have a sharing event in August where we'll bring some external folks and speakers who have an opportunity to share with you the progress that we've made as a university in Beyond Boundaries. So I'm going to turn it over to Thanasis for this.
As Tim talked about, there's a lot of great things that are coming out of Beyond Boundaries. I want to encourage you to go online. The materials that we presented at the NCR of Beyond Boundaries that has been developed by all the faculty committees is there. Very exciting. Lots of things happening. So the next question is, okay, which is the first domino that needs to fall for all these great things to start happening? So the first domino that needs to fall is we need more money. All right? And there are a number of ways to get more money, but there are a couple of things that the President talked about that we need to focus on. We have an amazing signature research enterprise that's already at $500 million. As the President said, for us to be a global destination, we need to grow our signature areas. So imagine by 2022, 700 million research enterprise in signature areas that makes us globally known. But what we need to do at the same time is bring down the 43%. Our peers are in the 20s. So over 5 years, we need to grow, but we need to bring the part that we pay down. Now, do the arithmetic. If we save 20%, $700 million, that's all the money that we can push down into the colleges and into student affairs, all kinds of things. All right. So how do we do that? We need more external support. We need some of the big research grants, the HRCs, the ERCs. We need some of the big government contracts, the 100 million DoD contracts. We need much more development. So we need really cool, big ideas across the university. So we can actually go and take it to the next level of funding that can bring down, while we're still expanding our signature areas, we can bring down how much we pay internally so we can take those resources and put them back into the enterprise. Also, as we develop these signature areas, we need to connect them to instruction. The President said we have great institutes, they're not very well connected to instruction. We need people to come here to know that whatever the signature strengths of the university are, the students, undergraduates and graduates have access to them. That's how we become a better destination for talent. We need more efficiency in instruction. That can also save money and put more money into the enterprise. Right now we have a lot of entry courses that have too high a failure rate. Of course, we do them in very big lecture halls. There's no opportunities for personalized learning for students. And we also have a lot of esoteric teaching at the advanced level, many small sectors. We need to figure out what the portfolio is. That would create more resources for all of us to use through the new budget model. So, if you're hearing a lot about destination areas, it's because it's the first domino that needs to fall. Once that domino falls, everything else that's in Beyond Boundaries is going to start happening because we're going to have the resources to make it happen. So that's why you're hearing a lot about destination areas, because we need to figure out a way that will become a global destination in signature areas, both for research and education, while we decrease our internal investment and we increase the external investment in those particular areas. And to do all that, we went and hired a great Vice President for Research and Innovation from Penn State, who joined us only a few months ago. She's already working 20 hours a day. So I want to introduce you to Teresa Mayer, who will be heading our implementation of destination areas to take you through our next steps.
Okay. Well, thank you, Thanasis. It's nice to see everyone and meet everyone for the first time. I'm going to try to give a brief overview to provide some context, additional context for the destination areas. And what I wanted to do is connect us back to the Beyond Boundaries website. And this, I think, really provides context for the destination areas. That today's land-grant institutions need to address the economic and societal needs of this generation. And we are moving from the land-grant mission of purely agricultural and mechanical to also embrace and expand the vision to include the knowledge-based global economy. And that's particularly important and a great opportunity for Virginia Tech, given our binary model where we have a growing presence in the National Capital Region, which provides access to the 5th largest metropolitan area in the country. And if we look at the students that we educate and the jobs in Virginia, there's a tremendous need for expanding the scope of the university to include this. It goes on to say our graduates must have the capacity to solve complex problems of a regional, national, and global scale. I really want to focus on complexity because at the heart of it, that's really what the destination areas are about. So I'm sure when you were considering graduate school, you considered, where would I like to go? What are my interests? And asked, what are the best places around the country that offer this education? And the destination areas are really aimed to try to answer that question. How can Virginia Tech continue to make strategic investments to be the go-to destination, but not only for research, also for undergraduate and graduate instruction, as well as translation. And it's difficult to think about complex problems in every domain. We can't be everything to everybody. And so we need to strategically focus our investments. And so some of the boundary conditions for looking at the destination areas are to support our 21st century land-grant mission that we just talked about, to solve complex and wicked problems that don't have clear and easy solutions, that improve the human condition, that aggregate and apply our cross-cutting disciplinary strengths, ones that we already have and ones that we will continue to grow through this process, but also to capitalize on external opportunities. And that's very important, that we're always outward-facing and understand what the needs are for our external constituents. So I think all of you have seen the destination area slide. Given the limited time, I'll be very brief. But to say that as we looked at the survey results that actually came in 2 days before I started here, and really being an outsider and looking at the results, what was very exciting is that looking across the colleges and institutes, we saw the emergence of disciplinary strengths. And it was, again, very exciting to me to see these emerge from the data, and then recognize that many of these are working in isolation. And if we're interested in solving these complex problems, there is an opportunity for us to bring these together within the context of the destination areas. And so these emerged, and perhaps it's not surprising that these particular areas, in terms of human-centered communities, resilient earth systems, data and decision sciences, given our strong history and land-grant mission, that these particular areas emerged, because this is where the university has historically made investments, both in instruction as well as research. New investments in health sciences and technology led to the emergence of the adaptive brain and behavior across the lifespan. So this is the basis, but as we're listening to feedback, I thought that it would be particularly important to provide some specific examples and try to frame what it is and why. Why are we trying to do this? And this is, I think, a good example for our first destination area, which is in the intelligent infrastructure and human-centered communities. Obviously, there is a big driver in terms of the smart cities concept, and this is an example that is from IBM. So many large corporations are investing heavily in thinking about how we can solve pieces of these very complex problems. And so this really frames some of the challenges in terms of 1 billion new cars, 80% increase in carbon emissions. And so you can see that the problems within this general framework are very broad and very complex, and they interact with one another. So just on the right-hand side of the slide, hopefully you can connect the thematic topics within this large and complex problem space to areas that you work on within the university, because we have strengths in many, if not all, of these areas. But again, they're working somewhat in isolation. And if we look at our external trends and drivers and opportunities, what we're seeing is that in the area of sponsored research initiatives, both from government and industry, while there's continued investment in small individual investigator awards and one-on-one collaborations, there's a growing emphasis, roughly half, for example, half to two-thirds of the NSF budget is being devoted to solving these larger and more complex problems. And so here we provided a couple of examples of the new White House Smart Cities Initiative, as well as, interestingly, companies launching major partnership opportunities for tens of millions of dollars. There's a growing need for philanthropy. The investments are being made in areas of great societal need and concern. And so we're seeing that the federal government is partnering with philanthropic organizations to provide large funding opportunities. And then finally, there are new opportunities in learning. And here was a really interesting example from Forbes that pointed out that in the smart cities environment and the Internet of Things, that companies are very interested in hiring students who have a solid background in liberal arts because they have good pattern-seeking abilities. And so thinking about how we can be aware of these large, complex problems as we begin to think about the development of our future curricular opportunities. So let's do a deep dive and try to understand how we build a destination area. And this is just one example. And really what we're trying to do is answer large problems, or large questions. And so this example would be thinking about how we can envision and develop the technology and the infrastructure to support the future of low congestion traffic with high safety and low accident rates. And so we can think about the tremendous advances in autonomous vehicles and systems. But it's not just about the hardware where we have great strengths. It's not just about thinking about connectivity and human factors, which is on the left, but also thinking about policy and ethics. And so we can't progress with the technology development without having teams that are thinking simultaneously and interacting with the technologists who are looking at policy and ethics. And we're better to do that than Virginia Tech, where we have a strong foundation in the National Capital Region, surrounded by our policy makers. And we have internal strengths in that area. We also have to think about security. I mean, certainly all of you have heard about, hacking of cars and the terrible things that can happen. And so all of these are very important. So if we think about each of these as being a disciplinary strength, that maybe it is a broadened disciplinary strength, as we build destination areas, we're taking these disciplinary strengths, and this is a scheme that came out of Beyond Boundaries, where each of these legs is a disciplinary strength, and we bring those together and provide investment so that we can work more effectively at the interface, thinking about our external needs and drivers in terms of the opportunities both in instruction, research, and translation. It's very, very important. The destination areas are not simply about driving big research programs. They're about developing cross-cutting curricula. We have the Pathways program that's been very successful and I think is leading to enrollment increases. Opportunities for enhanced experiential learning, but also addressing the growing need and demand of our students and our faculty for innovation and entrepreneurship. And then it provides opportunities to enhance our inclusion and diversity. So all of these aspects are part of the destination areas. And I believe that there has been some confusion over what is included and how we will approach that. So let's go back and think about the logistics of how we build a destination area. You heard the President talk about the new budget model and college-level resources. We're going to use college-level incubators and the funding that's passed down to the college. where colleges can work together to enhance disciplinary strength. And perhaps some of those will advance into areas where we see the need or the opportunity to bring these together to answer bigger questions. All of the disciplinary strengths are not necessarily going to translate into the destination areas because these are select areas. That in no way detracts from the importance of these areas. We want to emphasize that looking at the overall budget, only about 10% of the budget of the growth is really in the destination area. So there's a tremendous resources available to further increase the disciplinary strength. Likewise, even if somebody is involved in an incubator, they will very likely have independent activities in their own disciplinary strength. And so this is really to enhance our instructional research and translational capabilities. So the Presidential Incubator, the university level incubator will be used to seed initiatives at the intersection of these disciplinary strengths. So we will evaluate and look at the strength of these groups and then look at how they can combine with other groups in order to address these larger and more complex problems. In the early stage, in the first year, we will be launching these types of initiatives where we're bringing together groups. And eventually, we can populate the larger, overarching questions. So I gave you one example. The example I gave you before could be one of these small groups working together. And so hopefully you can envision how you can continue to participate over the next 5 years or beyond in building very strong destination areas and how new areas can emerge and new areas or these groups can leave depending on how the process evolves over time. And so this is the approach of how we can grow and evolve the destination areas over time. So we've received feedback from the faculty community. We did have a steering committee of about 50 faculty engaged in the first stage definition of the destination area. If those faculty are here, it would be great if you could stand up. But we had a large group actively participating. We went to the National Capital Region last week and had very active discussions with our external group. And from that, we're able to take away some important messages and integrate that into the framework and thinking. And so it's important to point out that this is not day number one that the destination opens and all the resources are allocated. This will be a phased process to populate the destination areas, as we described on the previous slide, using these college-level and university-level incubators. So over the course of the next several months, we're going to continue to work with our steering committee and larger faculty groups and the entire faculty to refine the destination areas, both using internal and external input. We will work with the units, including the colleges and the institutes, on the startup as well as the long-term operational plan. And in the first year, identify and seed initial groups, those collections, and conduct a gap analysis for the initial faculty hire. And with that, turn it back over to the President.
Well, we have time for some questions. So I'd invite you to use the mics. Come on up and you can address them to any of us, or we've got our steering committee here, and co-chairs. So we've got a group here ready to engage. We have maybe 10 minutes to deal with questions. So someone stood up. I happen to know these individuals. Okay, good. Is that mic on?
Is it on?
Yeah,
Great.
you got it.
So we are United Students Against Sweatshops, and as you know, President Sands, Nike has violated Virginia Tech's licensee code of conduct by refusing to allow the Workers' Rights Consortium, the WRC, to inspect the brand's factories using Virginia Tech apparel. And here we are talking about advancing our school to prepare students for a more global world. this doesn't really add up to us. So we're wondering, are we only talking global when it's in service to corporate exploitation?
And we know, President Sands, that you've referred us to University Relations Office and that they're working on it. President Sands, you've been knowing about this for 4 months, and frankly, we don't think this issue needs to go through another office because as a responsible president, you have all the power you need to put Nike on notice and all the information. If you've been working on it, then how come we haven't received any concrete evidence of that since last fall?
You should have received the letter today, but I mean,
We are getting more and more frustrated that you've been stalling to take action on something that is so straightforward and urgent that other schools have already done.
This is just one last point. I think it will paint a really good picture to the audience. On Wednesday, March 16th, we brought Noi, an ex-garment worker, to campus. Not a single administrator came despite extending the invitation in advance. We are a global university, you're right. Through our material investments, we are tied to an increasingly globalized economy that has very real repercussions on the lives of workers like Noi across the world. How can you preach that the university values inclusion when you're not there to listen to voices like hers? In that speak out, she talked about the horrific working experiences she was subjected to by our business partner, Nike. So when you're not listening to that, those are the things that you're sidestepping and thus excusing. So when you're having these
I'm happy to have you talk, we have had this engagement going on, and I want to say one thing that I support what you're trying to do. There's no question about that. And in the context of Beyond Boundaries, what we talk about in terms of the VT-shaped student is a student who can utilize empathy to understand the broader context of challenges that we face, not only in this country, but globally. So I applaud what you're doing. I know we're not responding at the pace that you would like, but we are taking it seriously. It's a very complex problem because of contractual issues and our own policies, but I do appreciate what you're trying to do. I just don't think this is the forum to get into a detailed discussion, but I'm glad you came and look forward to engaging in the future.
This is a very straightforward matter. They're violating our licensee code of conduct, and if they're violating a conduct with a contract that we're legally bound to, we should take responsibility as a university.
I understand, but I've got to open up the questions to others and not just to your group. But I will engage, and we have engaged.
All right, mic check! Mic check! President Sands! You stalled on this issue for too long. You stalled on this issue for too long. We are here to practice a simple request. Will you practice what you preach? Will you practice what you preach? In solidarity with workers worldwide. In solidarity with workers worldwide. By publicly committing to putting Nike on notice. By publicly committing to putting Nike on notice.
Not at this time, but we are sending a letter to the organization that oversees our relationship with Nike. And you should have gotten a copy of that or will today. But I'm not going to make a decision today that would break our contract. But I do respect what you're trying to do. I honestly do. And I think this is a conversation we can... Okay, well, I know it isn't. It's much more complicated than you portray it, but I do appreciate it. Maybe we could move to... They are a complex issue. You're looking at it from a Western lens. I mean, I understand. Well, thank you, and we will continue that conversation. And when you tweet, please don't have people with Nike logos on in the tweet. Next.
I have a question. It's on? I have a question to the members of the Beyond Boundaries Committee. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role that humanities played in your discussion, because it seems like it's absent from some of the slides that you showed today. And I mean, I think of the university, and frankly, I think of a global university as a place where it's not just about outcomes, it's actually about that space for thinking that doesn't necessarily lead to dollars. And I'm wondering if, you know, I mean, it might not be the sexiest thing in the world, but it seems to me that if we don't preserve a space like the university to be able to really work on those humanities topics, then we've kind of lost something. And I didn't hear it at all in today's talk, and I'm wondering if somebody who's either spoken or somebody who's been part of the committee could talk to that.
Well, actually, we didn't have a chance to get into details, although Vice President Mayer did talk about the role in the intelligent infrastructure and human-centered computing of humanities. But each of the destination areas has a connection to the social sciences and to the humanities and, frankly, to the arts. And this is one of the reasons for going after these broader destination areas that encompass the entire university. I think if we skip that, if we lose that, we will be a technical institute and not much more. So I fully support that philosophy and that really admonition that we do not forget the humanities. The humanities are in the room. How they will be woven in depends on you all and being involved in the conversations about the destination areas. But it goes beyond that. When we talk about the VT-shaped student, and you saw some of them just a moment ago, they're not always going to be that loud, but I have to say that their perspective is attempting to be a global one, and it's using empathy as essentially a filter for understanding big problems. So that will be part of everything we do, and I would challenge those in the humanities and social sciences to step up and make your voice heard, because I certainly feel that way. I know our Vice President does, and our Provost comes from the humanities as well as the sciences. So we have to do this. If we don't do that well, it won't work, frankly. And if you look at the other destination areas, they all have incredible roles for the humanities. You look at integrated security. I mean, that's a human thing. It absolutely is important that we understand the ethics, that we understand the philosophy behind security, and that we actually build that in, those strengths that we have, into those destination areas. Otherwise, what have we done that's different than what we've done in the past? Not much. If we look at, what's another example, the resilient Earth, that whole thing is loaded with the human condition. And I will tell you one thing that we've had very intense conversations about, and I'll credit Mark Edwards and his team for really raising the flag and showing how it can be done. If all of our destination areas, and frankly everything we do, but let's focus on the destination areas, if they are built on this idea of an aspiration for a human condition that we desire to see, an improvement in the human condition, and then they work backwards, like the work with Flint, we will be in a place where the humanities come into and are not only at the table, they're often leading the direction of the future of the university in that particular area. I often look at, just to use the Flint example again, I mean, it's so impressive what Mark Edwards and his team did in terms of going in and being action-oriented, essentially community-based science, and cutting through all the garbage that has been in the way, lowering the barriers to getting the truth out. But I often look at what Mark Edwards did and think, what if we had a destination area already that integrated, say, environmental sociology? And what if the team that Mark Edwards took had environmental sociologists on it rather than them coming later? Now, I don't know that actually happened. It could be that they were there. I just didn't see, we were talking about them. But I think we can bring broader teams to these opportunities than we have in the past. And it will amplify the effect. It's not just about, is the water safe? I mean, that's important. That's the aspirational human condition. We want safe and clean drinking water for everyone on the planet. But you can't just be the expert in testing the water. You've got to do other things. And, Mark and his team got in, they learned how to use FOIA. They learned how to get into the policy world in a big way. They got into the politics in a big way without being political. And I think that's a great example. So I would ask that we all aspire to move these destination areas, the VT-shaped student, the pathways, all these initiatives that are coming out of Beyond Boundaries, and many started before, to look at the human condition we're trying to aspiring to change and to work backwards. So everyone's at the table, all of our talent is brought into those areas. We can't do it all. I mean, one of the things that I think we kind of glossed over, we can't do it all. That's why we have to be very strategic about which destination areas we pick to emphasize. And each one of them needs to cut across the entire university. If they don't, they're not destination areas in the way we describe them.
As we discussed, as the President pointed out, if you look at our budget model going forward for the next 5 years, we have made an absolute commitment to cap the growth of the STEM areas so that we actually remain a balanced, comprehensive university. All the deans have agreed to those numbers. So as we grow, everybody's coming along, as the president says. Humanities are growing, arts are growing, design is growing. And actually, in that budget moment, because we are being captured in a comprehensive university, you will see that above and beyond destination area, where most of our money is going, which is the colleges, the growth of the investment of the university in the next 5 years in humanities, arts, and social sciences is the largest percentage of growth the university has ever put in that space.
Yeah, and I could say that the colleges that we've got are going to play key roles. Pamplin Business College has a role in many of the destination areas. Matter of fact, they have some leadership roles, I'd say, in data analytics and decision science. They also have a role in innovation, which is going to go into the incubator. So I think you can go down the list and look at all the colleges and how they can contribute. The College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences, as I mentioned, has a role in all of these areas. And one of the things that I think some of you may not know is that the fastest growing college in terms of the application pressure is liberal arts and human sciences. And I think that reflects the recognition from the outside and also internally that the strengths that college brings need to be integrated and will be integrated, and we're having this conversation, and people on the outside are looking and seeing that. And so I think there's great potential to rebalance and grow the entire university. I always think of it as we've got a bunch of tent poles, and we've got to raise the tent. So we've got some of the poles already. We need to add a few more, but really it's about raising the big tent over those poles. We have time for, yeah.
My name is Alan Raffel. I work at the Water Resource Research Center. So the examples you raised of the work in Flint makes me think about that it seems like the areas that were discussed are about talent, expertise. I wonder if there's how much conversation there is in going into how services get delivered, because as I understand the Flint example, that a lot of that, the money that supported that came out of discretionary money that Dr. Edwards had. If that had not been there, would the university have been able to respond? How much conversation is going into ways of being able to respond? And maybe more pointedly, how much is extension part of the overall conversation?
Yeah, I've been getting to extension, which is a great platform that all of our land grants have, and Virginia Tech has a fantastic extension service. Yeah, when we think about what extension could become in a generation's time, it could be that vehicle that we deliver services directly to, knowledge directly to our communities, but not just in the traditional areas that extension has served. Extension already serves a very broad swath, but we can go beyond that, and I think that is part of the Beyond Boundaries discussion. How do we take advantage of this structure we've already got in place, the fact that we've got an office in every community, every county, every city in Virginia. And we've also got tentacles out there that look extension-like in other parts of the world. So how do we build on that model? That's a very important part of the conversation beyond boundaries, because it can't be, one of the things that we've really learned, I think, in the conversation is that the best way to learn and the best way to innovate is to put yourself in a real-life environment. And what we're seeing is these living laboratories that pop up are really going to be the basis for where a lot of our learning and a lot of our discovery takes place. We talk about the National Capital Region. That's a huge area. We've got Steve McKnight here working hard on opportunities to create living learning environments. We already have some in the National Capital Region. We've got I think Roanoke is going to turn into that for us on the health sciences and technology intersection. And then globally, we've got opportunities to go beyond. If you talk to the students, matter of fact, we've had a lot of panels and breakouts with students and faculty and staff, but the students, especially the undergraduate one that I went to several months ago, really opened my eyes in terms of what our students think about where we're going. I mean, if you ask the students, they think we ought to be all over the world. We ought to have little campuses and extension in every place, every corner of the world. And that's where they want to go from one place to another. They all want to be back for football season for some reason, but now basketball season. But they really imagine themselves traipsing all over, being involved in these living learning laboratories that engage the communities they're in. So I mean, that's a vague answer, but I fully support where you're headed with that. Maybe one more and then we'll break for lunch or whatever you need to go do. All right, well, thank you very much for your attention, and continue to be engaged. Look for opportunities. Go to Beyond Boundaries website. When we have an event, informal or formal, please share your expertise and your ideas with us. Thank you very much.